Good evening, everybody. Hope everyone is well and keeping safe, you and your families. And welcome to another episode of the Mind of Yash PCOS series. So, thank you for joining in. And if you're here, please be sure to say hi in the comments. And during the show, leave your comments and feedback, your questions, so that we can address it. And yeah, I want it to be as interactive as possible because these episodes are not just for me, because I feel like I really grow in each session. Each person that I talk to, I learn so much. So I really hope that you as well will be learning and really getting the value from the information, and just hoping that these things could resonate with you. Because as I was talking with our guest tonight, so she well, I'll give you the little bio before I bring her on. So Miss Laura.s.Lalla is both a teacher and a counseling psychologist. She works with people who have anxiety and depressive disorders, behavioral and personality disorders, parents of children on the autism spectrum, autistic individuals, and couples. So, and the reason that I really wanted Laura to be on tonight, and I gave the bio now because I felt like just now we were having a little chat before we came on, before I came on here, and it felt even like a mini therapy session, a little like, ooh, a little, it's so good to like bounce those type of ideas off of somebody who has that knowledge and experience. And we were just talking about the authenticity sometimes, and people just needing to embrace themselves and be real, and just show themselves, and everything about yourself, your struggles, what you're going through, your good days, your not so good days. It's so important for us to really show people our every side. So not just when we're having good days, bad days, um, but just even the days that we struggle, so that people can understand that we don't have it all together. Nobody has it all together, but together we can get through each day. We can get through each struggle. We can get through life generally. So tonight I really wanted to have Laura on because one of our guests a few weeks ago, Shrestha, she talked about doing sessions with her and how much that has helped her in terms of self-awareness and self-reflection and these things. And sometimes we are going through a lot in our minds with our mental health, whether it's anxiety, whether it's stress, whether it's depression. And those things are not easy to deal with, but sometimes we need somebody to give us those tools, to give us that information to be able to deal with it a little better, and to understand that it's not um a bad thing to be going through these things. Is just something that would help us to have growth, to help us to connect with each other. It's also something that could be inside of us that is causing some of these things as well. So of course I'm not the expert on this, so that's why I have Miss Lalla on tonight. So without further ado, I talked a whole lot tonight because I just was feeling very inspired and hopeful from our little chat even before we came live. And so I'm going to bring her on right now. So please join me in welcoming Miss Laura.s.Lalla.
Hello.
Hi, good evening again, Laura, and thank you once again for joining me tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
So yes, I was just sharing a little bit with the audience about your background and why I thought it was so important to have you on with me tonight. I mean, it's not directly PCOS related, but I think that your expertise and knowledge would help in the areas because, sometimes when you're diagnosed with PCOS, the fitness experts or the medical professionals, they try to help you with the physical things, so like your irregular periods, whether you are having acne and these different things. But sometimes the mental matters um, are not being dealt with, and it's
Right.
almost sometimes like put under a rug, or and you kind of have to be suffering silently, and then you don't know who you can talk to, how
Right.
open you can be with it, and whatnot. So I really hope that people tuning in would leave their questions and feedback so that we can address it.
Okay. Yeah. I'll try my best. You make me sound way more accomplished than I feel I am, but I'll try.
So okay, so tell me a little bit about how you came into that field of counseling psychology.
Okay. Well, years ago, as a member of the Trinidad and Tobago Psychological Association, I was having a conversation with the then president at the time of the association, and I really had not at that point considered practicing. I was already teaching,
Yeah.
and she had said to me, I think she had planted the thought of practicing, and mentioning that I was missing out on my niche, which
Right.
is working with autism because my daughter is autistic. She has Asperger's.
Okay.
And given that I've had, several years experience working with therapists with her and learning so much about it, she had mentioned that to me, and I guess planted the seed. Everything starts with the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And as the universe would have it, a therapist I had worked with before with my daughter contacted me out of the blue and asked me to work with her. And that's where it started. I really, at that point, still had not considered practicing fully. I really thought I was helping her out just for one project. And from there, um, in this field, really works by recommendation and word of mouth. And that's what started happening. And that's really how I started practicing and doing it full time. Because when
Right.
you make a commitment to a client, you really can't just drop it
Yeah.
and exit. You really are in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's really how I started practicing.
Okay. Okay. That's quite interesting. What you said, and I think we'll discuss it a little bit more because that very last thing that you said, that you can't just drop a client. I
Yes.
I would probably want to know a little bit more about like how you deal with that, because to me that sounds like a something a little difficult for you to deal with as a psychologist as well. You know.
Well, when you work with any individual, it's really crucial to take into account that this is a person,
Yeah.
and you can make or break a mind, essentially.
Yeah.
And so it's not a responsibility that you take lightly. So going in that you are in it for better, for worse. It
Mm-hmm.
is a relationship you're building,
Right.
um, and for as long as it takes. For each client, each individual, that's different. Some people are really, really good at really following through and, making progress. Some people take a little longer, and it really, a lot of the times, has nothing to do with ability. It really has to do with a lot of external factors
Yeah.
that impact on that. But whatever the case is, I'm not able, ethically speaking, or I can't just say in the middle of something, I'm done. I've had enough, right? We're not done. It takes as long as it takes, and I have to see it through.
Yeah.
So, because we're building relationships, because this person has put a lot of their trust in you to really get them where they want to be, it is something that I need to see through to the end.
Yeah. Yeah. I find that's very admirable because I
Thank you so much.
yeah, because it sounds difficult because I know um like when I went into the engineering field, I have a background in chemical and process engineering. My options, I picked it basically based on the subject I like and looked at my options. So it was like engineering or medicine. And when I thought about going into medicine, I knew that I couldn't see myself becoming emotionally detached to people and the struggles that they're going through, and it just felt like it would have taken such a toll on me. So I think it's a very special kind of person, or a certain skill set you need to build to really deal with something like that on a regular basis, and just what you're saying.
It's a skill set.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think any psychologist really thinks of themselves as special. They're just people. We struggle like everyone else. Um, but it is a skill set in order to remain objective
Hmm.
and see the challenge for what it is
Yeah.
rather than the challenge as the person. I cannot do that for my own family, my own child, for instance. I'm too emotionally connected to that situation.
Right.
Um, so you really do have to have some sort of detachment
Mm.
in order to be able to help the individual. When you
Yeah.
start getting really attached to that person and start seeing the challenge that or the struggle that they are having, that's when you know, okay, this relationship is no longer viable. I can no longer help the individual.
Yeah.
And I think every psychologist understands the limit that they have, because we are not limitless. You
Mm.
know, we do have limits. There are some things that I think every psychologist would have to admit to themselves that this is beyond my expertise or beyond my reach, and I would have to refer. So
Yeah.
there is that.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely understand. So, have you dealt with any clients who had polycystic ovarian syndrome? Oh,
I'm sure I have.
yeah, but you would know
Um,
about
Not
that.
specifically. By the
Yeah.
time somebody gets to me, they're not seeing me for a medical issue. They're
Hmm.
seeing me because of the issues that arise out of it.
Yes.
So I've had clients who struggled with infertility
Mm.
or who've struggled with difficulty conceiving,
Yeah.
who struggled with anxiety or depression,
Mm.
um, and all of the factors associated with that.
Right.
Um, that may have arisen out of something like polycystic ovarian syndrome,
Hmm.
but not specifically that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I understand. Okay. So, a more general question. So, how would you say stress and other mental health issues affect your body and your quality of life?
Okay. Well, we live from our minds first,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Our thoughts inform how we behave, and they influence how our body functions. Um, Given the host of hormones that we, work with on a regular basis, stress hormones, um, hormones that affect mood, either negatively or positively.
Hmm.
Um, it's easy to see how stress directly influences that.
Yeah.
So, and that's just speaking about the biology of it. Um, Stress affects mood as well, and it
Hmm.
influences things like eating habits.
For sure.
It influences how we feel about ourselves and our bodies. It influences the type of behavior that we engage in, and that also affects how we feel about ourselves and other people around us. So,
Hmm.
given that we live from our minds and given that our thoughts influence all of these things, it's really important to understand that if our thoughts are born out of stress, then we're operating at less than optimum.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I like how you put it though, because we live from our mind first.
Yeah.
I hadn't quite heard it exactly like that, but I have realized just how much your thoughts do influence everything, your relationships. I've spent years just having this a positive outlook, but having a negative mindset, at least towards myself, and that would have put strain on me physically, on my relationships, on my outputs, my energy levels. I mean,
Mhm.
PCOS is one factor, yes, but I could feel a difference, just me changing the way that I think, just putting more positive thoughts and just telling myself more positive things, because my internal monologue was very, very negative.
Yeah.
I could feel that. I mean, I would have days where my energy levels is not to the point that I want it to be, but just changing how I think about my day or my struggle, or whatever it is I'm facing, I could feel that difference. And it's a little amazing to me that it took me so long to realize that. But then I realized too that sometimes you have to go through certain things to get that
Right.
light bulb moment.
And it's practice, right? It
Oh,
takes
as well.
practice. It's consistency, and there's a reason for that. Um, we're engineered
Hmm.
to think negatively,
Hmm.
and that's what people don't realize. That if you think about it, if you are doing something that's an automated task, say like washing dishes,
Yeah.
you're on autopilot. You know how to do that, right? Your mind wanders. And if
Hmm.
you're not aware of it, your mind goes to your problems
Yeah.
and you start thinking about all of the problems that you have and all of the negative things that happened and how do I resolve these problems.
Hmm.
Your mind never really goes to the positive. And that's just because we are wired that way. And the
Yeah.
more we engage in that, it's the more we set those pathways in motion.
Yeah.
So it takes practice. It takes a lot of practice and consistent effort to reorganize and rewire our brains to think differently and to think positively while knowing that we can't always be positive because that's not possible, but
Right.
that it's okay to not always be positive.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You said like the word of rewire is, I think, my word for 2020, because I realized that that's exactly what I had to do. I had to rewire my thinking. My brain was automatically going into the patterns of my life, of what I was doing from since I was uh I want to say a tot, but maybe a little older than that. But just those patterns that I'm accustomed to, my brain felt that that was safe. And so now I had to rewire
Yeah,
and change that. And what you're saying too about the practice, because from a training that I did this year with the women's school, we had to actually write scripts so that we could start to do that rewiring. And at
yeah,
first, you wondered, I really wondered if that's really is going to help anything, but it really changed my thinking substantially, just practicing it
yeah,
and being aware of it, being aware of when my mind is going down that path and spiraling, and knowing what to say to myself
yeah.
to take me out of it.
Yes. So awareness is key.
Yeah.
Once you're aware of it, then you can catch it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
True. So, okay, so what is your take on the state of mental health in Trinidad and Tobago? Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, I think Trinidad and Tobago has mostly been and still is to some extent a very traditional society. Um, most people, I don't want to say most really, that's not the correct word. Many people do not understand the significance of being mentally healthy. And I think not having an understanding of what therapy is really does not, so it does not allow it to resonate with a lot of people as something that they should be doing.
Yeah.
And so, like I always tell people, look, therapy is not advice giving. You can go to anyone for advice. You have your friends for that. It's
Mm.
skill building,
Yes.
all right? And there are many people who go through life not having the kind of skills they need to cope with challenges that will inevitably come.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they do come, they crumble or they don't know how to successfully navigate something like that.
Yeah.
So really, it is skill building, and that's what I do. I don't give advice necessarily. So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people think, well, I don't want to go to somebody for advice and pay for that because I can get that from somewhere else. And I don't want to go to someone who's going to gossip or who's going to tell other people about me.
Mm.
So having that understanding that this is a professional relationship, and as a professional, there is complete confidentiality. So
Mm-hmm.
whatever is said to me stays with me and goes nowhere. When you are no longer a client, I destroy your file. So there is no chance of anyone having access to that.
Sounds like CIA.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, because we're looking at people's lives, right? And we're
Yes.
dealing with some really intense personal issues
Yeah.
and confidential information that maybe their own families don't even know.
Correct. Yeah.
So we have to be really mindful of how much trust they're putting into us.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there is a lot to know, there is a lot to learn about therapy, about psychology and psychologists and what they do
Mm-hmm.
in Trinidad. And I think now, though, I think that there is so much more information out there. I think people are learning.
Yeah.
I think younger generations are more open and aware and knowledgeable. And I think that, we're seeing a lot more willingness for people to really come in and seek help. And I always tell people, I think everybody should go to therapy. None of us is escaping this life unscathed. We
Yeah.
all have an experience. We all have had life happen to us. And we all have something that affects the way we behave or the way we interact with someone or the way we think. And I think it benefits everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I agree with that. I do find hope because I do think that mental health is such a hot topic right now, and I think like people probably just, I mean, this year has been challenging for everybody, so it was almost like people reached their breaking point and needed some type of outlet, needed to talk about their challenges, even if they didn't actually do therapy itself, but do little things for themselves to really find that peace, that balance. And I mean, it's still a challenge for a lot of us, because it's a great adjustment. But I
Yes.
do feel like it's so hopeful that people are really considering that. I just, I hope it could go all the way where, it can be, people can be a little more empathetic towards other people, because there's one thing about being aware of your own mental health matters and issues, but to also be aware of that somebody else it could be struggling with something, and to be just kinder and more empathetic.
Yeah. And that's something that takes time as well. I mean, awareness is one thing, knowledge is another. And, being aware just means you know it exists,
Mm-hmm.
but being knowledgeable about something makes all the difference. It informs the kind of compassion and the empathy that we have for other people. It
Yeah.
informs the way we interact with them and respond to them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, though, as time goes on, and these things take time because we're talking about changing cultures,
Yes.
yeah, and that's generations deep.
Yeah.
So, and there's so much involved in a culture that
Mm.
informs how people behave. So I think it takes time, but I think that as we progress, I think that we will have that and we will get there.
Yeah. As Kelly is saying here tonight as well, she says, yes, we seem to have lost the art of humaning.
Yes, in a manner of speaking, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Um,
But I
Society
have,
does that to us. Social media to an extent as well.
yeah.
There is a good and a bad side to it.
Yeah.
And it allows people to have that detachment to others, to have an insight into life,
Yeah.
but still be detached enough that it doesn't matter that much. To
Yeah.
not recognize that we're looking at real people. We are dealing with real people.
Right. And I think
We don't know them, but
that
we
kind of
know about their lives.
sorry. I think it just goes back to what we were saying just before we came on here, and just being authentic. And what people are putting on social media is not the true picture. And sometimes that just kind of gives you the wrong impression. It feels like, okay, this is what your life is about. It's glamorous, you're doing this and that and going places. And not knowing the struggles. And I'm not for saying that you use social media to just be talking about your struggles or your pain points all the time in a like a Debbie Downer kind of way, but just knowing somebody is, well, for me, dealing with polycystic ovarian syndrome as well, somebody who gets anxious as well, like just knowing that side, the human side of people, is so helpful. But it's it's such a funny thing because sometimes people want to see the realness, and then sometimes you do it and you get the criticism or the judgment or the mean comments still. So it's so important to really own it, and as well as you're saying, to build those skill set, because the strongest person, sometimes those type of things could still affect them. You're not made of concrete or
Yeah.
something that it wouldn't hurt you. But
Yes. No, you're quite right.
yeah.
You're quite right. And you have to be really self-assured when you're
Yeah.
putting yourself out there that whatever comes, the good and the bad, you can take it in stride. And you
Yeah.
are who you are and you stand by that. Um, the thing is, you can't please everyone.
Mm. Right.
You can't, everyone cannot like you, and you can't like everyone. We're not made like that.
Yeah.
But it's not only recognition of that, but really a complete understanding of that and having that resonate with you that
Mm.
allows someone to be completely authentic so that the negatives really kind of fall off your
Yeah.
back, you know.
Yeah.
And I actually am seeing the comments. I saw that
You
Kelly
did
said,
very good.
does it have to do with self-preservation, prevention of appearing weak? To an extent, there is a facade that we all, you know, to some extent, some more than others, really want to project um, for several reasons too. It's not just for appearance's sake. Some people really have issues with what their perception is of what weak and strong is.
Yeah.
Um, and it could be a result of experiences, it could be what they were taught, um, and that's just how they live their lives.
Hmm.
And really getting behind that is really what serves to uncover that facade that they're
Yeah.
presenting.
And what you just said just made me remember something that I also learned this year as well. It's about when you're born into this world, and the validation that you get from other people. That's like the first thing that happens. Somebody, with your parents or your family members are the ones who kind of build your image. And it just made me remember just how important it is, as sometimes as parents, and not just parents, but like people around young children, even babies, to be mindful of what they are saying. Because you'd have relatives when you're growing up, they tease you and they tell you these things. It's like, okay, you're too skinny, or they call you chubby, or whatever it is. And you now trying to form your self image, and having these external people giving you that, building that up in your head. It's like, okay, well, so maybe I am chubby, and that kind of starts that ball rolling, and you start looking for that outside, what's the word I'm looking for, but the external
Validation.
factor. Yes, the outside validation. um and that's kind of, to me, like, that's how you start to go down the road of what, worried about people's perception, because I struggled with that as well. Because growing up, you would be applauded for like doing well in school, and that sort of thing. So anytime I would think I'm going to feel something, or I actually did feel a course in UE as well, and just how much that affected me, and just having a fear of failure, going through my life. It started from people putting value on the things that you do or the things that you achieve, and not necessarily the person you are and the gifts, and whether you're, a creative child, or, those type of things, and those things make you crave that type of,
Yes, it feels good.
approval, stamp of approval.
Right. And you're quite right. And that's because every individual starts off wanting to please their parents. These are the people that you look up to, the people who are charged with caring for you, um, guiding you, and teaching you. And so it's natural to want to please them. And of course, that spills over as we grow and develop into the rest of society. Um, the thing is, and let me be really clear, people do the best, generally speaking, with what they know and what
Yeah.
they have.
Yeah.
And it's really natural for parents to say, but you're so smart or you're so pretty, and no, not knowingly placing value on a quality that someone may not always be able to maintain. And I mean, really, what is pretty anyway, right? That's a subjective term.
Right.
What happens if, God forbid, I get into an accident and I'm not your idea of pretty anymore, right?
Yeah.
Then what does that say about who I am? But the intentions are great. But it's more useful to say things like, well, you tried really hard or you worked really hard on that. Praise effort, because that's really what gets you somewhere, rather than you're smart. Smart is, what is that? That's an inherent quality, and what does that mean? I'm only smart if I make all A's, right? And so that's the underlying message that's sent.
Yeah.
But of course, that's not the intention.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that we always have to be mindful of, that while we work to undo a lot of that narrative, we have to also be mindful of not encouraging resentment,
Yes.
because we judge others by their actions, but we judge ourselves by our intentions. We can't see intention.
Mm.
We don't realize that other people have good intentions as well. We just see actions. And so we have to be mindful that our actions don't always look stellar, you know, but our intentions are good, and so we have to give that same grace to
Yeah.
others as well.
Yeah. I love that word, grace, because I think that's something that we lack a lot, and we sometimes react to people based on how we're feeling. So, and we might have a certain trigger. So, like, even in my marriage, my husband might have said something in the earlies, and it would remind me of something else, and I would have a reaction. And he didn't mean it in that way. It's just it reminded me of something, and that's the way I reacted. And it wasn't the right reaction. And but is when you look, as you're saying, at the intention. And he always tells me, it's like, well, we're not enemies here, we're like a team. So I'm not telling you this out of malice or anything like that. This is just my opinion, this is whatever. So
Yeah,
it really helps me in to see somebody else's perspective, to really try to put myself in their shoes. And even if I don't quite understand it,
yeah,
sometimes when somebody does something that, it's that what you said about your expectations. You can't really expect somebody to react the way you would to
yeah,
a situation.
right, yeah. I'm glad you used the word triggers.
Mm.
That's important. And by no means am I saying that, we give a free pass to bad behavior.
Yeah.
Um, but it helps to be aware of what our triggers are, because that's really, like you said, we react rather than respond. But if we have that awareness and we're able to say, why am I getting upset about this?
Yeah.
Is it anger? Is it hurt? Is it fear or something else?
Yeah.
Understanding the exact emotion we're feeling is really crucial. A lot of times we just go straight to, well, I'm angry,
Yeah.
you know, and yeah, anger is the resulting emotion, but there is something that's feeding the anger, and understanding what that is really helps to understand where that trigger is coming from.
Yeah.
That takes practice. So
Yeah. I was just about to say because I remember like we would have lots of talks over the years. We've been married 8 years and been together 7 years before that. And sometimes I feel like we're still learning each other because sometimes I would have reacted or felt something, and I don't quite know why I'm feeling it. I just know it caused something
yeah,
inside of me, and I had to really take some time and be like, okay, well, I'm feeling this way now, but I need a little time. Let me think about it. So we got to a point where he would realize that I need a moment to kind of figure out, well, firstly, what I'm feeling, and two, why I'm feeling it before I could really have the conversation about it.
yeah. Um, that's crucial, and I think that it works both ways. Everybody really needs to do some of that thinking, especially when they respond or they interact with someone. What's really my intention? What am I trying to get across? Why is it affecting me that way?
Yeah.
Especially if you don't like feeling like that. Just because understanding that no emotions are bad emotions, all emotions teach us something. So it's not that if I'm upset or if I'm angry, if I'm sad, or if I'm uncomfortable, that's a negative emotion. It's teaching me something.
Yeah.
But what is it teaching me? Right? And so I think everybody needs to do some of that. That again is a skill,
Mhm.
and it takes a while. There's no one who's perfect at it.
Yeah.
I'm not perfect at that, and I've been practicing it for a while. So it takes a while to really be aware and get a hang of it,
Yeah, it really does, but it just makes me question. It's like, why is it so difficult for us to do that type of thing?
because it's not natural.
Okay.
Um, like I was mentioning before, we're so hardwired, evolutionarily speaking, to negative, to protect ourselves, um, and whatever that takes. So
Yeah.
whatever defense we have to put up for that, we will. So we are not hardwired to think in that way. So that's why it takes so much practice to do.
Yeah. Hmm. Gosh. So let me see. Okay, so I had this question. Are there classifications of mental health issues?
Yes, there are some. There are personality disorders, there are mood disorders, and then, of course, there are disorders and issues that arise out of things like trauma. And of course, then there are the other types of disorders that are classified like autism spectrum, ADHD, and that sort of thing. That is an entire classification on its own.
Yeah.
So most of the time, I work with personality and mood disorders.
Okay.
So some of the times there's a lot of biology involved, a lot of genetics. So if you have a history of something, a family history of a personality disorder, so it could be bipolar, it could be borderline personality disorder, um, manic depressive disorder, then your risk of
Mm.
having that, given the right conditions, might be a lot higher.
Yeah.
Um, so I work with people who experience those kinds of disorders as well as mood disorders that arise out of just environment and experiences, things like anxiety and depression that are not always a result of biology,
Hmm.
but the right conditions that would have existed for that. Um, and then I work with trauma victims as well. And of course, trauma has its own host of resulting issues.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there are classifications, and that's why I do assessments
I was
so
just
that I can be really clear on where I'm going with any particular individual. So some people I know really pretty easily, and then sometimes it takes a lot of assessing for me to get a clear idea of what I'm looking at.
Right, yeah, that was the question that popped into my head when you were describing it. Like, what sort of assessment you do before you say, okay, yes, I will take you on as a client? Is it like that? Like, you do the assessment and then you agree to take on the client, or you already have taken on the client when you do the assessment?
Not necessarily. Sometimes, if I'm not sure what my limits are with the individual, if I feel like it may require something that I'm not um, an expert at, or I'm not, trained for,
Yeah.
I may assess and I may say, look, I think you need to be referred to someone else who specializes in whatever that I do not specialize in. I may have an idea of that before. Sometimes I know this is something I can deal with, but I just need to know, are we looking at moderate to severe depression or anxiety? Are we looking at PTSD, or are we looking at complex PTSD, which is a little different? And then that informs how I go ahead or how I move forward with treating the
Mm.
individual.
Okay, okay. Understood. That's quite interesting. So, okay, so you said sometimes you could tell more easily than with other people. Can you tell us a little bit about what the signs of depression in particular?
Okay, well, depression is a little more difficult to just look at an individual or interact with them and um, be able to tell that, because people are great at masking and putting on a front.
Yeah.
But the first, I mean, I know that a lot of people would have read about depression, and so some of the most obvious signs are lack of self care. That's one of the first things that tend to really fall off.
Yeah.
You find that their self care has taken a nosedive. Eating habits would have changed, sleeping habits, and it can go either way. Sometimes they stop eating, sometimes they eat a lot more, sometimes they sleep a lot more, sometimes they don't sleep at all.
Yeah.
Isolation from society, family members, lack of interest in things that they were once very interested in. So those are the usual signs of depression. Sometimes it's a little more complex because depression is not something we see on an individual. Um, and it takes a lot more digging to find out what's really happening with the individual there. Anxiety is a lot more apparent. It's a
So true.
lot easier to tell when someone has anxiety as a condition rather than just is anxious in the moment. The types of words, the language that they use, um, it's really a key. So I know sometimes by the words that they use, sometimes people who have anxiety conditions often try to really reassure me while speaking that I've got this
Mm.
and I'm good. And so a lot of reassurance goes on. That's a dead giveaway. Um, you know, Sometimes people who suffer from anxiety as a condition, they have control issues, for very good reason, um, because anxiety is just, a lot of it is fear of the unknown, and
Yeah.
your mind spirals downward. So having control over every situation means I know what's going to happen. There is no unknown. So having complete control over a session or how things go, that's a lot more obvious.
Yeah. I actually do suffer from my anxiety. So this year has been an interesting year for my anxiety because I have anxiety on a general basis, but there would be certain periods of time during my life where it would be out of control to the point where I can't function, and if I'm alone, I could spiral very easily, and it's something that got worse over the years, and it's something that a lot of people women with PCOS deal with as well, and of course, this year in particular, my anxiety went through the roof in the beginning of the pandemic, but I did talk to a lot of people who generally I didn't think dealt with anxiety, who probably had those type of thing anxiety related things maybe for the first time in their life this year, just because of all the unknown factors, like if you thought you had unknown factors in years before, this year was year of just not having control of
Yeah.
everything. So, and I've had anxiety attacks, and they're not comfortable. And sometimes I could not be thinking. Or I could be thinking that nothing's on my mind. I'm just sitting here, and then I would just start to feel the physical signs of anxiety. And so this year I had to find more ways to deal with it. Whether it was I had to do things like even putting on meditative music just to fall asleep. Um, Making sure that I'm watching. I had to stay away from the news a lot. That gave me a lot of anxiety as well. And then, like what I mentioned before, having these scripts to say to myself, drinking teas, certain teas. I had a guest on, the founder of Urban Teas. She specifically came up with a line of teas just for persons who deal with things like anxiety, and it's not a comfortable feeling, and it's kind of ridiculous what I'm thinking now, because it's like anxiety happens because you can't you want to control a situation. You want to know the outcome of everything, and I wish I could control the anxiety. I wish, so it's like this kind of cycle. But I realize that there are things that I can do to cope with it. It's not I'm not I don't do great every day, but I do feel it's getting better with, as you say, practice and consistency.
And that's great. You don't have to be an expert at it right away. There is no
Yeah.
such thing. Um, and it's okay to struggle. That happens. It's not as if you struggle today, there's no progress, or that you can't pick it up tomorrow.
Yeah.
So that's something that a lot of people struggle with as well, especially when they're trying to get a grip on some of these conditions. um, they think, okay, today was a bad day, and so it's all done. you know Everything is gone to waste, and that's not it. um, it's having that flexibility of mind to understand that it is an ebb and flow, and there will be good and bad days, and that's okay as well. Um, and yeah, we did say, I see somebody said, yeah,
Yeah, correct.
fear of the unknown. And that's one of the key markers of anxiety, not knowing what's coming, not knowing how a situation is going to turn out, and wanting to control that. So obviously, we can't control most anything. We can only control ourselves and how we perceive life, experiences, situations. So everything else, that means, is out of our control,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Everything. That includes our children as well,
Oh yes.
right? That includes what they do, what comes out of their mouths, what they think. They are people in their own right, and we have no control over that. Um, and anxiety makes us want to control those things. So, like you said, I'm glad you found ways of controlling that. And one of the first things I tell people to do, and really the strategies differ depending on the individual themselves. But one of the things that really works is lowering your demands on yourself.
Mm.
When we suffer from anxiety, quite often we place high demands. We have a list of things we have to get done, and we must accomplish, and we must have in order. Our homes must be clean, we must have our meals made, and we must have our children doing really well in school, and we must have it together, and we must look like life is great. Lowering those demands really works well. And so that's one of the first things, I help train people to really instill first thing in the morning, and
Yeah.
making it a practice, asking yourself, what is working for me today and what is not working for me today?
Yeah.
What do I need more of and what do I need less of? And that helps prioritize just those four questions. So we don't need to fold all the laundry, or we do not need to necessarily cook from scratch. We can eat bread. No one is going to starve. If
Bread is
that's what today is requiring, that's what it's requiring. We don't need to iron every single item of clothing. We probably don't need to iron anything at all, right?
I don't iron. I
Lower
hate
the
iron.
demands on yourself. The world
Yeah,
is not going to crumble. And a lot of the times, it's seeing it through and understanding that, look, I didn't have a perfectly clean house, and I didn't cook a meal, and everything is okay. And
yeah,
that sometimes is really what cements that if you follow it through, you will see that the world did not end. And
yeah.
it's all right to do that.
That's. I know you're saying some really great points there, Laura, but it's just making it's. Oh, oh, where did she go? Where did she go? Okay, hopefully she joins back. I hope I think she had a got booted off, but I just hopefully that she comes back on soon. I just wanted. It was so funny what she is saying. Okay, she's coming back. Okay, I don't know what happened. But are you hearing me?
I'm hearing you. I am not seeing myself.
Oh well, I think we're seeing you. So guys, if you're on still, let me know. She's gone again. Sure. I'm seeing you.
I don't know why I'm getting this feedback. Maybe I need to lower my mic. Are you still hearing me?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that it's so funny what you're saying because about myself, not so much housework thing. Oh, she's gone again. What's going on? Um, okay, hopefully she could come back on. I don't know what's happening. But it was just so funny what she was saying about putting demands on yourself, and housework is one of the things that I really if people would look at the clutter, like I wish I could show you right now. There's some clothes that really needs to be folded. My curtain is not ironed. Like I've been talking about this unironed curtain since the beginning of this PCOS series, and I tell myself that those things don't bother me, but it really does. Like because just because I kind of grew up in a traditional home where they expect women to do certain things, and as you said before, it's like it's what they know. That's what they grew up in, and so. But then when I was in school, that's what I kind of had to focus on. So I didn't really build skills in terms of like keeping a kitchen clean or ironing. I hate ironing. That's my worst job. Um, I could cook, but I don't necessarily like it. I think it's the biggest hoax that it takes so long to get food to eat. But I realized that even though that I thought those type of things weren't bothering me, like just because of my how I grew up and my perception of or trying to be like perfect in all arenas of my life, like that was really stressing me out. So I when I did the training this year, some training this year, and I was looking at the different areas of my life, like your health, your family, your wealth and your contribution and sort of thing. Like my environment was like the lowest when I had to assess my environment. It was the lowest and it was causing me the most stress. And I'm like, and now I'm telling myself, I was like, Yash, why are you really why do you have this expectation and these demands on yourself to have a perfect looking house? You never really learn to do that. You don't have the skills in the first place to do it properly. Like my husband has better skills than me, but he had to learn to do that as well. And I'm so grateful to his mom and grandma for doing that. But it's so true in terms of I kind of went on a tangent, but it's just really to cement what you're saying in terms of having these demands and sometimes having unrealistic demands on yourself for things that you never built the skills for, or you didn't grow up that way, and still having that expectation yourself. It sounds kind of insane as I say it out loud to do that to yourself, but it's sometimes what we do, and it's sometimes what causes me a lot of anxiety, you know?
Yeah. And no, you're quite right. And I see that Kelly said it sounds simple, but that's a tall order. And it is. And that's why it takes so much practice and really quite a lot. This is where therapy comes in really useful, because your support system is really a crucial part of this. So some people are really lucky and they have fantastic support systems that allow them to really engage fully in the work of rewiring how they see themselves and the world around them. And that's fantastic. Wonderful if you have that. That's the dream. Some
Yeah.
people just don't have that. And so they have to do the work themselves. But what it means is almost like swimming upstream, and it's fighting against an entire culture. And it's fighting against your family, and it's fighting against friends and everybody you care about. And so having to work with people who deal with those external factors means that we now have to really go deeper and start doing the work of building strength and resilience, because resilience is key to success. That's the number one deciding factor in success.
Yeah.
And resilience really speaks about how well we bounce back when we fall down and after challenges. And that sometimes is really key in how successful someone is in detaching themselves from what they've been taught,
Mm.
what they've learned to value, and building a different value system and essentially a belief system, which is really building from the ground up.
Yeah.
So sometimes it involves breaking down an entire structure and rebuilding, and that's a lot of work. And it's really a lot of work on the client's part, because I can walk with you, I can guide you, but you've got to do the work,
Yeah.
you know? And so you're right. You've got all of this going on. Like, I know I say it doesn't bother me, but it really does. And so then I would say, well, what is it that you really value? Or what are
Yeah.
your goals? What do you really want to achieve? A lot of times people tell me happiness. And when they say happiness, what most people mean is they really want to achieve meaning that resonates with them.
Yeah.
So, what brings that? What gives your life meaning? What are the things that, if you had nothing else to consider, would really give your life meaning?
Can,
And
sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. So, what are those things? And that's where we start our work. So, we start one place and we start off with the client thinking, well, this is what I need. I need to get rid of my anxiety. And then we really sometimes segue into something else where we have to look at the root of all of it. And so that's where we start. And I have to say, I always tell clients, look, I live a really unconventional life. I don't cook. It's never resonated with me. I've always said, if my husband starves, then he's an idiot. He's a grown man with two hands. You can't tell me you're starving to death. So that's really not something that I'm going to engage in. But it wasn't always like that, and I was not always that self-assured. That's a journey. And it
Yeah.
really has to do with a lot of what precedent am I willing to set for myself? What goals do I really have? And how do I really want to live? And having the assuredness that whatever happens on this journey, whether I end up single, whether I end up staying married, whatever it is, it's fine because it's mine and
Yeah.
it's the precedent that I'm setting.
Yeah.
Getting to that point takes some time.
It does. It does. And two things I just want to add to what you're saying there too. It takes you building that mindset and that self assuredness. That's what you're saying, because for a while that really bothered me. I think I did a video on my YouTube channel just talking about it because I was really frustrated, because I was saying that my husband is the one who tends to do when he's home. He loves to cook, he's better at cleaning, at ironing, at all the traditional, woman roles than I am. And people on the outside would say things that really affected me, like really made me feel like I wasn't being a good wife or mom or whatever. But then I started to think as like, well, I'm doing all these other things. Um, and what is, as you're saying, what do I really place value on? Is it me spending time with my daughter a little more, if that means that we eat bread, and bread, thank goodness the bread van is past here every day at around um and just knowing that your worth is not in those things. And the other thing I wanted to talk about is your motivation to change the culture, which is a tall order, Kelly, and it is. But my motivation, because I realized that all the things that I'm struggling with when I had my daughter, I realized I didn't want her to have to deal with those things. I wanted her to build up a good self image from now. I mean, she can learn the skills if she does want to cook, if she does want to do those type of things. And yes, she can definitely do that if she wants. But to have that self assuredness and a good self image, so that she doesn't see her worth in those things, but she sees her worth as just being her, and whatever she brings to this world, her contribution to the world.
Well, the fact that you're worried about it is
Mhm.
fantastic in the first place, because
Yeah.
that means you're thinking about it and you're
Mhm.
putting some effort into it.
Yeah.
So that's great. Um, and it, let me just say that you don't have to take on the task of changing an entire culture. That's not your job.
Yeah.
That's a monumental effort that no one individual can do by themselves. You're just starting with changing your life
Yeah.
and accomplishing what you want in your own circle. And that's enough. You know, culture is culture. Culture
Yeah.
changes anyway, with or without us. And that's something we have no control over. But we do have control of ourselves. And that's what we always have to keep going back to. My
Yeah.
life. That's the only thing I can't control. I can't even control my daughter and
Mm.
her life. She will do what she wants. She likes what she likes.
Mm.
And, the most I can do is be supportive in that and not place my expectations on her,
Yeah.
for what I would like for her.
Yeah.
You know, I want
Uh,
her happiness, which means I want her to find meaning for herself.
yeah.
And so, whatever that looks like, she's still my daughter anyway, at the end of the day.
Yeah. That's a great one. Oh, Kelly was saying, she's like, Lord, she looks like she needs a therapist. Yeah, I think we all do. I think we all do.
Everybody, even myself, I have my own.
And I feel like this was a therapy session. I had moments where I was very emotional in this. So, okay, let me see in terms. Well, I had the question in terms of what has your personal struggle been with mental health. But I know you touched on the fact that, well, you basically said that you have your days that you struggle as well. But is there anything you want to share in terms of your personal struggle with mental health?
Okay, yeah, well, it's important to understand that therapists are people. We live life like everyone else. Personally, for me, and it's never been a secret, my daughter is Asperger's,
Hmm.
so she's on the autism spectrum, and I think you would have seen her comment, Rosanna De Silva. She's like my work wife, right? So she's been there with me, so she knows exactly what I'm talking about. That has built up quite a bit of anxiety over the years, myself. So I've always had to find ways. And like I said before, she's my daughter, so I'm not objective. My
Yeah.
fears come into play with her, my concerns. She's mine, so I'm not detached. So I've had to find ways of lowering my expectations when I needed to, um, working on my own anxiety and making sure that I didn't project that onto her. She feeds off of my moods. So when I'm anxious, she's anxious. And she's also got severe anxiety as well, just as a comorbidity of autism.
Mm.
So I need to be really mindful that I don't project that onto her and add to it. Um, and understanding. really gaining a complete education in autism so that I'm not afraid of it, and it demystifies the condition,
Yeah.
um, so that I understand what she brings to the table and what she's dealing with in any given moment. So I have struggled a lot with that. Um, but I'm really lucky. I have a really fantastic support system. And, not a lot of people have that. I mean, my parents have been fantastic support systems. So it's easy for me to say when I'm really overwhelmed and I know that I'm reaching my limit, tell my mom, look, please, I need to take somebody to take over. I tell my husband, you deal with this because I'm human and I am going to reach my breaking point at some time.
Yeah.
So I've been really lucky, and I always have to be mindful of that. Not everyone has that support system, and that really is significant. Even my friends, Rosanna has been a fantastic support system. So she's Auntie Rosanna to my daughter. You know, um, just in helping and working with Amy and really being able to relate to her and all of that, it's really been fantastic.
No, I love that. Anytime I have somebody on and they talk about support systems, because I, for one, I'm so grateful for my support system as well. I mean, even to do this right now, I have to
Yeah,
leave my daughter with somebody, my husband or my grandmother or something.
yeah,
And I think we kind of fell away from that for a little while. But I'm so glad to hear that people are really stepping up and being support systems for their friends, and even us being support systems for other people. Because I always say, like, we're put on this earth to really help each other. That's why we have relationships, friendships, and all of these things. So, and I mean, even I struggled with even just asking for that help. So, so that in itself is also something that you have to get over yourself, and
yeah.
be
We're
happy.
not superhuman.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just ask for the help if you need it, and people willing. That's the other thing too. It's
we're
like,
willing.
yeah,
Yeah,
people willing to be there for you.
yeah. And really, it like you said, we are put on this earth to help each other to some extent. Yeah, we are walking each other home.
Mm.
Um, and it's really crucial to have that. I can't stress that enough. Some people aren't that lucky.
Yeah.
That's where I come in. Um, you know, Fortunately or unfortunately for them, but it helps. It really helps. And I always have to be mindful of it because frustration does take over. And I know having a support system doesn't mean I always have to get along and I always have to agree with every single thing, but it helps me to just recognize that with gratitude, that thank God
Hmm.
or thank the universe that I have this,
Yeah.
because this couldn't be as easy. And it hasn't been easy, but I can only imagine how much harder it would have been. So, yes, therapists do struggle. We
Yeah.
do. And it helps because it humanizes us and we become really intimately aware of what everyone else is struggling with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that makes your journey all the better, because you want somebody that who can relate and who can really empathize and sympathize with you and what you're going through. Um, it's not about putting somebody on a pedestal. It's just about connecting on that human level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And well, for me, everything is a learning experience.
Yeah.
What is it teaching me? What am
Yeah.
I learning from it? What am I taking away from it? And so it's really important to have those challenges. So it's gotten to the point where I never see a challenge now as something that, oh God, this is happening. It's always, what is it trying to teach me?
Yeah.
And that's to me the key in really progressing and growing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So, Laura, I mean, I think you've given us such nuggets of wisdom tonight. Like, I got on my own therapy session
I hope I
tonight.
was able to help shed
Yeah,
some
I
light
think
on it, as at least.
I think you definitely have, and I think even the people who are watching afterwards are going to get so much from what you've shared tonight. I don't want to keep you too much longer because I could talk to you, for a therapy session here. Um, but I'm so grateful for you. I'm so grateful for what you've shared. I think it's so important for people to be not just aware of the issues, but understand that it's gonna take some work, and you have to find it in yourself to do it for the people around you, for yourself, for your mental freedom. It's not going to be a bed of roses every day, but just what Laura is saying there is just it's how you couch it, it's how you say it. It could change the perspective, and you could really see the good in everything that you do, in that you have to go through. And sometimes your pain point can pivot you to your purpose, and that's what PCOS did for me. And I think that's what Laura struggles and has gotten her to this point where she's even able to help other people, and she just left my conversation. But that's okay. I know that you guys here have really gained from it, and I hope she sees this afterwards. We're always having some type of technical glitch. So Laura, Kelly is saying that this was wonderful. She truly appreciates these conversations, and I think it's conversations that we really need to have. Rosanna is saying, "Oh,
That's my
fantastic!"
that's my key support, Rosanna. Thank you so much, Kelly. Thank you, Rosanna. Rosanna's my work wife. So she's there with me every step of the way. She was there when I started to practice and throughout everything. And she's actually the first person I'm gonna out Rosanna to change my daughter's diaper. She's
Oh,
been there from
that's
the
a big
beginning.
deal. That's a big
Yeah.
deal.
So yeah. But thank you so much for having me. It really was great to have the opportunity to really clarify things and to give a different perspective on what some people may have of therapy,
Yeah,
and to, I guess, humanize it and make it more accessible.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's the first step, really. So before you leave me again, whatever is going on, just let people know how they can get in touch with you if they would like to have a therapy session. You could share some of that information.
Okay, well, I think you have my number, my phone number,
I do.
and my email address, so that could be shared
Mhm.
on your site. And also, they can also find me on the Trinidad and Tobago's Association of Psychologists website. I'm
Okay.
listed there as well, so my information is there. My office directions are there as well. If Yash, if you post the um, my number up or my email, they
Yeah.
can always contact me, and then I can always send them a pin to my office address.
Okay, great. Well, that sounds great. I'm sure. I hope a lot of people would reach out. Um, Myself, hopefully, I can even have a session at some point as well, other than this wonderful session I had tonight. But I'm so grateful for you, and I'm so thankful for all that you are doing. And I just want to honor you, what you're doing, and I just hope all the best for you, all the best in your endeavors. Um,
Thank you so much.
but just continue to just be you, and to be real, and to be so helpful to persons who need it, and being that person that they could come to safely, confidentially, and everything that they would need for them to build those skills and to really make a good change in their life for themselves and for the people around them. So thank you
Thank you
very
so much. And you as well. All the best. This is
much.
fantastic. This is
Oh,
really great.
thank you so much. So, guys, so you were watching the Mind of Yash PCOS series. Thank you so much for joining in. Make sure to you can still leave your comments when the video goes up after. I will post all the information to get in touch with Laura. And take care of yourselves, take care of your mental health, do what you need to do to find your own version of happiness. Don't let it be defined by anybody else but you. And be safe out there. That's all I could say really now. So
Okay, bye
good
everyone.
night, everyone.
Okay.